Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and thank you so much for joining me. Today we're doing a Yin Yoga class with the intention of making our way into splits pose. This was a theme suggested by one of our subscribers, so thank you very much for that. Splits is not really part of your normal practice. Don't worry about it. So this will be very accessible to all levels. We're going to use our props to make it a lot more comfortable and accessible. So we will be using quite a few props for this class. I'll ask that you have a strap handy. If you don't have a strap, you can use a belt. We'll need a block. And I'm also going to use bolsters. You don't need to have this. Block will be able to be used instead. If you do have some bolsters, try to get one that's a little bit thinner. So not the big cushions, but just these smaller shaped ones should be a little bit more helpful. And once you have that, let's start with our block. And we're going to lie down on our backs, keeping the knees bent. We're going to lift our hips up and slide the block directly underneath the tailbone. Keep the block on its first level. We're not trying to go up too high here. Palms rest on the belly. Let the knees fall in towards each other a little bit. And take smooth, steady breaths in and out through the nose, as we start to give ourselves the opportunity to let go of the day we've had. Focusing instead on how our body feels. Relaxing the shoulders, the neck. And really pay attention to your lower body. Most of the poses we'll be doing today will serve to either open up the hamstrings, stretch out the quads, or get pretty deep into the hips. All key elements of having a good splits pose. Let's draw our right knee in towards the chest and extend the left leg out. Starting with the hip flexors, you might feel a little bit of a stretch at the top of the left thigh here, maybe even into the inner groin, closer towards the right leg. You can hold on to the back of the thigh, front of the shin, or you could use a strap as well. See if you can press the left heel down into the ground so the leg stays straight as you pull the knee in towards you. This is a Yin Yoga practice, so we're holding these poses for a few moments. I'll try not to talk too much so that you can make this an introspective, quiet, calm practice. Holding for about 1.5 minutes here. Take your time as you bend your left knee, releasing the right leg. Place the foot down on the mat, and we'll move to the second side. Left thigh draws in towards the chest, right leg extends out. Try to keep your right heel planted on the ground here as you straighten and stretch through that right leg. Really reaching out through the leg bones here without lifting the belly. Keep the lower back nice and neutral as you pull the left thigh in a little bit closer. Drawing the shoulder blades down the back. Minimal effort with the arms. On this side for 1.5 minutes. Our last few moments here, reach through the right leg, pull the left knee in, tailbone is reaching towards the heels. Deep breath in through the nose and exhale. Let's release, bending both knees, feet flat on the ground, nice and slow, no rush. So we'll set the block off to the side. Just press the feet into the ground so you can lift your hips. Slide it from underneath you and reach for your strap. So this next pose will target the hamstrings directly. Start with your left knee bent, and you're going to hook the strap onto the right foot. And straightening the right leg up towards the ceiling. Start by really flexing at the ankle and pressing the heel up so you get a nice stretch into the calf and ankle, Achilles tendon. And the right knee can bend a little bit here. We don't want to lock the joint or hyperextend. You might choose to keep your left knee bent, especially if your hamstrings are fairly tight. If you wanted to take this a little bit further, you're going to straighten out the left leg. Keep both hips evenly grounded as you draw the right leg in towards the chest. This pose is a bit more intense than the one we did previously. You might find that you want to distract yourself or that your mind wanders a little bit more. Or you might even be holding your breath a little bit to compensate for the intensity of the pose. Try to keep the breath long and steady. And if you are finding it difficult to breathe in this pose, it usually just means that you've gone a little bit too far. We're just gently guiding the hamstrings to open up a little bit more. 5 more breaths right here in this pose. So before we switch sides, start to bend into your right knee a little bit. And you're either just going to keep your hold of the strap in the right hand. If the flexibility is there, you're going to grab a hold either of the big toe with your 2 peace fingers, or you're going to grab a hold of the sole of the foot. Coming into half happy baby, keep your right elbow to the inside of the leg as you draw the right knee down. We want to make sure we're not rolling over onto one side more than the other. Keep the weight centered. Stacking the right heel over the knee. Always trying to lengthen the left leg. Planting the lower back down into the mat. And inviting the muscles in the legs to soften and relax. Keep drawing the right knee down. Start to let go of the right foot, moving the strap out of the way. And we'll switch sides, bring the right foot down to the mat, right knee stays bent. And let's bring the strap to the ball of the left foot as we extend through that leg and reach it up towards the ceiling, flexing at the ankle so you can press into the heel. Feel free to stay here or to go a little bit deeper. You're going to straighten your right leg. And we all tend to have one side that's a little tighter than the other. Try not to worry about it too much. Instead of forcing this leg to go to the exact same place the first one did, just adapt the pose. Start to bend your left knee, either grabbing a hold of the strap in your left hand or reaching for the foot itself. Stacking the ankle over the knee, left elbow to the inside of the leg, transitioning into half happy baby pose. Always coming back to the sensations you feel in your body. Imagining you can send your breath directly into the belly of the muscle. Deep into that left hip and left thigh, wherever you feel the stretch the most right now. Our last 5 breaths on this side. Re-extend the right leg. Try to make the most of your last few moments in this pose. Let's release, remove the strap. And before we do anything, let's just bend both knees, bring the feet wide, and let the knees fall in towards each other, hands resting on the lower belly. Noticing how the legs are feeling after those 2 poses, 3 poses actually. Making our way into a seated pose. Let's come up. Sitting up tall with the legs straightened down in front of us. Let's keep the right leg extended to the mat and bring your left foot to the inside of that right thigh. So both hip bones and both shoulders are still squared off to the top of the mat. Feel free to bend your right knee here, especially if the flexibility is limited or you're working with an injury. Sometimes even putting a block underneath that leg can be a really nice idea and a way to make the pose more supportive. Otherwise, let's move into our forward fold. And because this is a Yin Yoga pose, we're not going to grab and push or pull our way deeper into the shape. Instead, we're going to come into a place where we can, just like gravity, pull us deeper into the pose, letting the upper body be really heavy. And you could always put a block underneath your chest or underneath the forehead here as well to keep you supported. And this is a great pose to open up the back body. From the crown of the head, down the neck and the spine, all the way down into the hamstrings and back of the foot. And let's remind ourselves that yoga is not a performance. It does not matter if you're folding all the way down to the ground or if you're just hinging forward an inch or two. The benefit of the pose will be the same. And it's pretty cliche to say, but it really isn't about the destination. It's about the journey. So let go of these goals or ideals, or expectations you have of yourself and your body, and just enjoy the process. So if you're folded pretty low, just start to walk the hands back in super slowly. There is no rush to come out of this pose. Just walk the palms back in so you can start to lift the chest. You might need to engage your belly a little bit for this to protect the lower back. And before we do anything, just sit up tall. Notice where you feel this the most. Let's switch sides. Left leg forward. And let's bring that right foot in, bending at the knee. So again, here maybe put a block or a little bit of padding underneath the left knee. And let's move forward into our fold. Easing your way into it. We're here for a little while, so there really is no need to go all the way down right away. Your body will naturally open as we hold the shape. Again, letting go of expectations of ourselves, of our body. Hips and shoulders still squared to the front of the mat. About 5 to 8 more breaths here. Soften the upper back and the shoulders. Relax the jaw. Notice if you're tightening up the quads or the hamstrings. Trying to strain yourself in this pose. Just relax and breathe. As slowly as before, let's start to walk the hands in and lift the chest nice and slow. Take a moment just to observe. Let's release, bending the left knee. Let's come onto hands and knees. We're going to give our hamstrings a little bit of a break and focus a little bit more on the hip flexors and quads. So those are just as important in our splits as our hamstrings are. We are going to start by patting the left knee. So you can just double up your mat, or you can put a blanket or a towel directly underneath your knee if that helps. And let's step our right foot forward in between the hands, the top of the mat, coming into a low lunge. So first make sure you're aligning your right knee over the ankle and not letting it go past. You might be more comfortable with your palms or your fingertips to the ground. Alternatively, you can come up onto a block or two. Let the hips drop down nice and low as you lean your heart forward. Try not to let the shoulders lift up to the ears. Being careful not to put too much weight on the wrist. So we're about halfway here. I'll give you the option of staying exactly where you are. If you wanted to take this a little bit deeper for the second half of the pose, you'll just need to make sure your left palm is down on the mat, and we're going to take a quad stretch. So reaching back with your right hand, pulling the left heel close in towards the glutes. You can always use a strap to do this, and if it's too intense or uncomfortable in any way or makes you tense up, just stay in your low lunge. We're here for 10 breaths, about 1 minute. If you're holding onto your back foot, release it gently. And before we do the other side, we're just going to take an easy child's pose for a few breaths. So keep the knees about hip width distance apart, toes together, and we'll reach the arms back. Forehead to the ground or to a block. Relaxing the shoulders over the knees. Rolling back up. Preparing for the second side, please pad the right knee. Left foot steps forward. And we'll make our way into our low lunge. Maybe grab a block or two if that's more comfortable. As you invite the hips to press down, chest stays a little bit lifted. Just so you're not rounding forward, contracting. You want to keep the spine nice and long. So this is our halfway mark. If you want to take your quad stretch, bring your right palm closer towards the ground, and we're going to reach back with our left hand to draw the right heel in. 10 breaths on this side. Let's release the back foot. We'll come back into our easy child's pose. Coming up. Okay, so we're ready to explore our peak pose, which is the splits. I'll show you lots of different ways to do it, so we're going to ease our way into the shape. Just depends which level you're at. To begin, coming up into our tabletop pose, as if we were coming into a lunge, we're going to step our right foot forward in between the palms. So make sure your feet are hip width distance apart. Option 1 is to do half splits by straightening the right leg, and you could choose to keep your foot flat on the ground, or you could flex at the ankle, pointing the toes up. Already this is pretty intense into the hamstrings, and over time, gradually as you hold the pose, you can play with sliding the heel forward and bringing the knee back a little bit so that you're inviting the hips to lower down. This is option 1. Option 2, if the flexibility is there and you can open up the hips a little bit more, you can place a block directly underneath the hips and the hamstrings, which is what I'm going to start off with, or I'll use a bolster actually. So even though my hips could lower all the way down onto the ground, I'm going to gradually get my way there so that I don't stretch my hamstrings too much too quick. So find your edge and see if you can keep your back toes curled under. So I'm going to use a cushion, which I find is a little bit more comfortable. I'm going to keep the right toes lifted up and the back toes curled under, holding here for 10 breaths before I move the bolster out of the way. And it could be helpful to be close to a wall here if you're having a hard time balancing. Keep pulling right hip back, left hip forward. All right, if you wanted to progress a little bit deeper, I'm going to point my left toes back behind me, and I'm going to slide this bolster out of the way so that my hips can drop down a little bit lower, and then I'm going to fold down using a block here. And let's come up really slowly. We've been here for a while. Just start to bend into the knees. Coming back to a tabletop pose. Sending the hips over the heels, hands on the tops of the thighs. Give yourself a few moments here. Okay, let's go to the second side. From tabletop pose, let's step our left foot forward. So you're either going to work from your half splits, eventually reaching that heel forward and bringing the right foot back behind you. So I'm going to start with my back toes curled under, and because I have less flexibility on this side, I'm going to use a block instead of a bolster. So trying to scoop my right hip forward, even though it wants to open up quite a bit. meets us halfway. Either stay here or you can move your props out of the way, pointing the toes back this time, and toes forward, and folding down onto that leg. Coming out. Bending into the knees. Sending the hips over the heels. Let's move our hips to the side. Stretch out the legs in front and roll all the way down onto your back. So I'm going to use one of my bolsters and place it underneath the knees. We're setting up for Shavasana, our final resting pose. And the bolster here is optional. It's just a really nice way to do Shavasana, especially because we've done so much for our lower body. Take up lots of space. Palms are facing up. And just notice the sensations from the waist down. You might feel a little bit of buzzing. Thank you so much for doing this class with me. I know splits pose is quite intense. Hopefully you still enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and share it with your friends. It really does make a huge difference for me. Have an absolutely wonderful day. Namaste.